Hey, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about hands. We're going to be talking about knives. We're going to be talking about sizes. We're going to be talking about ratios and why we carry the knives that we do. So simple question. What size knife do you carry? We've got small knives here. We've got medium knives and we've got large knives. I'd be willing to bet that most of you carry medium knives. Now, I'm not clairvoyant, but in the upcoming video, we're going to talk about how I know that and why we carry knives that we do. I hope to see you in the video.
You farted.
I did not fart.
You want me to?
It was a bullfrog.
It was you. We know it was you.
Here,
Big.
it was a bullfrog.
It was you, big bully frog.
I'm a bully frog.
Yeah, big butt frog.
All right, welcome back to the Fortified Castle. Hi to all my viewers. A lot of cool knives we're going to be looking at today and passing on some really cool, different, and some information you've never heard before. But before I do that, I just want to thank you all for stopping in and watching the video. So a video like this with all these knives, it takes about 5 hours to produce this video. And I just really appreciate it so much that you all take the time to stop by and check the channel out. Your likes and your comments really mean a lot to me. And when you subscribe, it just makes you want to create more content. And you actually you start feeling like you have an obligation, to your viewers. So thanks again from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate it. And let's get into this. Why do we buy these knives that we do? What's the determining factor in the type of knives that we buy? So to start with, I want to tell you, guys like pockets. We do. We like pockets. Your average pair of pants has 4 to 5 pockets. Cargo pants came along to give us more pockets. It was great, right? 7 pockets in cargo pants. And if you wear tactical pants, like I do, you got 9 to 11 different pockets in tactical pants. And so we love all these pockets, and then we need to put something in the pocket. And so we put pocket knives in the pocket of those cargo pants. And so that's not why we buy the size knives that we do, but it's just one of the things that allows us to carry these knives is pockets, plain and simple. But why do in the introduction I said most of you carry a medium-sized pocket knife? Why is that? And we're going to look at that in this video. So you see 3 sizes here: small knives, medium knives, and big knives. There's actually 2 more categories. There's tiny knives in there. There's extra large knives, but they're kind of a preferential preference. They make up such a small percentage of what we're talking about. We're not even going to consider those. We're just going to consider this. And why do I say most guys carry medium knives? I've been watching videos and involved in this knife collecting for decades. And when you look at videos, guys are talking about these medium sized knives right here. And that is pretty much what people carry. And so when they talk about a bigger knife, it's almost in an apologetic kind of way, right? And I'm that guy. So I've always liked bigger knives. I like carrying bigger knives, mainly because they just feel very comfortable in your hand and they give you a lot more capability. But I'm an outlier. And so we're going to talk about how I knew that. That's kind of intuitive just being and working around knives in the knife community and being a content provider. But there is a way scientifically that you can determine that. So what I did to kind of confirm my suspicions and put kind of a little bit of science into it is I went to two different knife retailers, and I looked at the size knives that they were selling. And so I don't know how many of each size knife they sell, but I do know I have had my own business, and I have run other people's businesses. Inventory is a really big thing. And so when you look at the inventory of a company or even like a catalog listing, that is going to tell you what they mostly sell. They're not going to put in a catalog um, knives that they don't sell a lot. And they might list it as a sale item to try to dump it, but otherwise they're just not featuring the knife that they're not primarily selling. And the same is true with inventory. They're not going to hold knives in inventory that they don't sell. So in the first retail outlet, they had a total of 29,711 knives that they had in inventory. Out of that number, 17,828 of those knives, the largest percentage of those knives, were knives that were under 3.49 inches. Most of them, in a very large of that percentage of them, 8,700, were knives between 3 and 3.49 inches. And the second largest percentage was knives that were in that 2 to 3 inch category. So most of the knives, that works out to 60% of knives were in that category. 30 to 35% of the knives were in this bigger category, the 4 to 5 inch knife range. And the rest of them fell in those peripheries we talked about. Tiny knives and extra large knives, about 5%, evenly spaced, were in those. So clearly most of the knives were in this category right here, the medium category. And that's what they intend to sell to people, and that's what they sell to people. They're not going to hold those knives in inventory. When you look at the other retail outlet, the results were similar. So I found that was a much smaller listing. They had a total of 6,360 something knives, I think, in that listing. So it's like 1/5 the size of the other store, but the ratios were the same. So they sold 60% of the knives fell in that medium category. So pretty interesting and pretty good confirmation that that's the kind of knives that we buy. But why is that? What attracts us to these medium knives? And there's a thing called a 3-4 ratio. You probably never heard of that before, or never been exposed to it before. And what is that? Well, that is the ratio of the blade length to the length of the handle. It's 3-4 ratio. So the blade length is 3/4 the length of the handle. And if you measure that out, this is a 4 1/8 inch knife. You would expect this blade to be 3 1/8 inch long. And when you measure it out, bam, it is pretty much 3 1/8 inch long. So this traditional folder falls in line with that 3-4 ratio. And it really doesn't matter what knife you look at. if you look at this Benchmade, it has a 4 and I think an 1/8 inch. Let me see here. It is a 4-inch handle length, so you expect the blade to be 3 inches. And when we look at the blade here, it is smack dab on 3 inches. The 3:4 ratio. Isn't that interesting? Have you guys ever heard of that before? And so what does that really have to do with how we buy knives? Well, you know, it brings up the question, are we buying knives for the length of the blade, or are we buying knives for the length of the handle? And I think you know, some of you could say, well, I buy the knife for the length of the handle, and some of you would say I buy the knife for the length of the blade. But I think there's more to it than that. And so let's talk about that. So as I mentioned earlier, you know, I like big knives, and the primary reason is they feel more comfortable in my hand. Now, I don't have extra large hands or even large hands. They're pretty big, medium-sized hands, and so I can fit a large glove, but they are medium. They're just on that borderline. And I also like these bigger blades because they allow you to do a lot harder work. And so I'm kind of an outlier. I fall in that 30% of guys who just like bigger knives. But they also have their drawbacks. And so they take up more room in your pocket. And they're heavier. And also, you know, there is a thing about this blade. It does concern people when you pull a knife out and you have a really big blade like this. Now, honestly, it's not substantially bigger than one of these medium knives, but people just pick up on the size of these blades, and it does kind of scare them a little. And so you have to be a little more careful on how you carry these knives. The medium knives, I have to admit, over the past couple of years at least, I am tending to carry medium knives more and more. And you know, they are smaller, more convenient. The truth is, especially for me, I don't really need a really big blade anymore. I don't work that hard. And so, you know, a smaller blade is completely, you know, usable in most of the circumstances. So the bottom line is you've got pros and cons, and you might think it's just preference why you use these type of blades. So why is it really a little more complicated than that? Well, if you were just buying a knife for the size of the handle, this knife right here is a Buck 112 Sport, and it is a 4 1/4 inches, I believe. Let me see here. Measure it. 4 1/4 inches. But I'm going to open this knife up, and you tell me what you think about that knife. Okay? So, does it look like there's something off about this knife? Does it look a little weird? You pick up on it, don't you? It's the blade. So at 4 1/4 inches, with the perfect ratio, this blade should be 3 1/2 inches. And when you take a look at the blade, it's actually less than 3 inches. And you pick up on it right away. Now, content providers will talk about this. They pick up on it too, and people notice when you don't have that knife at the 3:4 ratio. Does it really matter that this blade is a little smaller than it should be? No, I mean, it'll cut just fine, and it'll do most of the jobs that you want it to do. But it does matter, doesn't it? And the reason is, I know that's true, is these things don't sell well. Here's another one right here. This is a 5-inch handle, and this is the Cold Steel Ultimate Hunter. And when you open it up, it looks weird, don't it? It's different. And the difference is the blade. And so it has a 3.5-inch blade and a 5-inch handle. And with 5-inch handle, you should have a 4-inch blade. Now you're only talking a 1/2 inch, but I want to show you this knife is the same size. When you open it up, look at these knives, right? Doesn't this one on top, the Artesian Cutlery Shark, doesn't it look better than this Cold Steel? You just pick up on it right away. And so there's something more about that ratio, I think, than just coincidence in how knife companies are making their knives. It's clearly makes a difference on how we look at knives. And if blades didn't matter, if you're just choosing your knife for the handle size, then it wouldn't matter at all. But clearly it does. Think about that Buck Saunter with the 2.5-inch blade on it, or 2 3/4-inch blade. People don't like it. It doesn't sell well, and some people buy it and they're like, oh, it's okay. It's got a smaller blade, but it's okay. And it all boils down to that 3/4 ratio, and that a blade probably does matter. So I think overall, it's the handle size that matters most to us. And along with that, we can kind of intuitively know there's a weight that's associated with these handles and a blade size that's associated with these handles. And sometimes we would prefer to have a bigger blade on a knife, but overall, it's the handle size that I think we choose our knives by. And how it fits into the pocket, the weight of the knife, how it feels to us. And so overall, I think it is the size, the outside dimension of a closed knife that makes the most difference to us. So there is also a divide, if you will, between traditional knives and modern folders. And I want to talk about that just for a minute before we close the video out, because there is some subtle differences in how traditional knife guys look at knives and buy knives versus the modern folders. So a traditional knife guy, when he looks at a knife like this knife right here, it's 4 1/8 inches. They look at that as a large knife. But the modern folder guy doesn't really see it as a large knife. This is kind of the favorite size to buy in the modern knife community. And there's a big difference between these two knives. So isn't that kind of curious that there's a difference like that in the thought pattern? And if you're a traditional knife guy, you like buying these knives between 3 and 5 inches, 3.5 inches, like this Rosecraft knife, and 3 3/4 inches, like this Case gun stock. That's kind of the favorite size range to buy when you're a traditional knife guy. But a lot of these knives would be on the small side to a modern knife guy. Why is that? So I've told you that, I like the bigger knives. This is a 4 1/4 inch knife, and I think this is the perfect EDC. It's got a great slim blade for EDC. It's strong. It's in that 4-inch range. It's comfortable enough and strong enough to do most of the tasks that you want it to. But traditional guys think these are kind of bigger, where the modern guys don't. So what that boils down to is that these knives are constructed differently. And if you look at these traditional knives, oh, that's not a good example. If you look at these traditional knives, they're made with liners that are brass and dividers that are brass. So brass is heavier, and that gives extra weight to the knife right away. And they also have these bolsters on the end, which you don't see in modern folders. And so those bolsters add weight. Another reason is they work off a back spring. So even a single blade traditional folder has a back spring where a modern folder does not. They're usually just pass-through type construction, and if it does have a backing that closes this area up, it's a very lightweight type of plastic usually, and so it doesn't add a lot of weight to the knife. The other thing is modern folders just have a single blade, and that's one of the advantages of a traditional folder that traditional pocket knife guys like, is it has more than one blade, but that adds weight to the knife. And I think that is the difference between why a traditional guy considers this a larger knife and a modern folder guy doesn't see it as a big deal. Typically, these knives, which are the same size, weigh about 30% more on average. They could actually be more, but on average, they're about 30% heavier. And so modern guys, they don't feel that weight in the big size knives where the traditional folder does. And it explains why, most of us just like to carry a knife that's around 3.5 to 3.25 inches. It gives you the biggest blade option, the biggest handle option, and the lowest consideration of weight for the knife. And that explains that difference between these knives. But remember, these knives still, fall in line with that 3-4 ratio that makes them visually appealing to us. And so that's pretty much it. That's why we buy the knives that we buy. And I hope you enjoyed the video and found it informative. And once again, thank you so much for checking out the video. We'll see you in the next one.